Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yasodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Vishva Paramahansa Sisivati A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Namacharya Das Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Sagaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar, Shivasri Gaur, Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopida Shama Kunda Radha Kunda, Giri Govardhana Ki Jai, Sri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Navadvip Dham Ki Jai, Ganga Jamuna Tulsi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Ananda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhakti Vrinda Ki Jai, Go Premanandi, all glories to some devotees, all glories to some devotees, all glories to some devotees, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutade Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswata Deve Gauravani Prachadane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Tarane Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Up till now, Krishna has been talking about jnana and karma yoga predominantly, because, of course, first of all, he had to convince Arjuna to fight, so he used jnana to do that by saying you're not the body, and then he had to, at the same time, tell him not to renounce, so therefore he had to say, do your duty as a kshatriya and fight. So he emphasized both jnana and karma yoga, and then also said that Arjuna was not qualified for jnana yet, so therefore he had to do karma yoga. But that karma yoga should be without desire, nishkama karma yoga. So he should do his duty of fighting with no material goal in mind, such as elevation to svarga or getting a big kingdom, etc. So in other words, he has to do with detachment. However, it is difficult for us to do something without something for ourselves. So what is the motive for doing karmas without claiming anything for yourself? So Krishna says you have to actually develop some devotion and connect this all with the Supreme Lord. If you have devotion, then you do these acts with no desire for yourself, but out of devotion to the Lord. So there's an undercurrent of bhakti when doing karma yoga, and as well as when doing jnana yoga. So the third chapter was mainly about karma yoga. And then in the fourth chapter, Krishna talked largely about jnana. And he glorifies jnana as that process which burns up all karma. Nevertheless, that jnana also has to be directed towards devotion, so that eventually from jnana one comes to accept the Lord and perform bhakti. So this is how the different processes are linked together in the Bhagavad-gita. So in chapter 5, which is sometimes called jnana yoga or meditation, or sometimes Brahma yoga, again a little bit impersonal, all about jnana. So this chapter explains how karma yoga and jnana yoga are related to each other. So we don't think of them as isolated processes. They should be linked together. So for instance, in second verse of chapter 5, Krishna says, both renunciation of work and karma yoga produce the highest benefit, but of the two, karma yoga is better than renunciation of karma. So renunciation of karma here means jnana or sankhya. So of the two are good, but Krishna's emphasizing karma yoga. So, in spite of the fact that we have a lot of talk of jnana in this chapter, Krishna is trying to persuade Arjuna that he's not qualified for that jnana, so therefore he should do karma yoga. It's easier to perform for people in general. If one is qualified, then one can give up the karma and go into jnana or pursuit of Atma. So again, he keeps emphasizing the fact that you can't get to jnana yoga unless you do karma yoga. Renunciation is difficult to attain without karma yoga. The jnani engages in karma yoga. The jnani engaged in karma yoga quickly attains Brahman. So the difficulty of performance and possibility of deviation, because of the difficulty of performance and possibility of deviation, jnana yoga alone will certainly be a cause of suffering. So for normal people, jnana yoga is difficult because it requires detachment, intense study, which people are not used to, a renunciation of the world, etc. So that in a way is difficult. And because people are social animals, it's a little bit difficult. One could deviate from this process of renouncing and controlling the senses. So therefore it can be a difficult process which will cause suffering to the person. He who practices Nishkama Karma Yoga, who is also contemplating the Atma, quickly attains Brahman. So we should do Nishkama Karma Yoga with the aim of getting to Jnana or to Atma. So the Karma Yoga process is not isolated, it's linked to Jnana Yoga and understanding Atma. He who engages his mind in Atma while giving up the results of work attains a vision of Atma. The person not engaging his mind in Atma, being attached to the results out of lust, takes repeated birth and death. Here again he's emphasizing that you have to have a goal of Atma or Jnana, even if you're doing the Karma Yoga. The pure jiva does not become an agent or cause others to act. He does not enjoy the results or cause others to enjoy the results. This takes place by previous impressions. So in other words, we have the body and we have the jiva. So the pure jiva doesn't do any of these activities. They're promoted by previous impressions, which means his mind and all of the impressions from previous lifetimes and this lifetime, which give, let's say, an idea that this is nice or this is not nice, this is good, this is bad, etc. Based on that, then actions take place. So technically it's the storehouse of impressions in the subtle body or the mind, which is causing all of the actions that we say the jiva is doing, but actually it's not, it's these impressions. So the pure jiva, if he's fixed in the jiva, then he won't partake of the impressions of the mind and he won't do those activities. One who is in ignorance of the nature of jiva, not fixed in Atma, then he will succumb to acting according to his likes and dislikes in this world, and consequently he gets karma for that. The perfect Lord is not responsible for the sinful or pious acts of the jivas, but since their eternal knowledge is covered by their eternal hostility to the Lord, the living entities are bewildered by that ignorance and blame the Lord. So this is an important verse because it explains that God is not responsible for evil. This is a problem that we have in religion in general. Why does God make us suffer or allow us to suffer in this world? So no matter how much people try to explain it, it becomes difficult. And because it cannot be explained properly, people lose faith. Then they say God must be uncaring, or he doesn't exist at all. Otherwise, why do we suffer in this world? So why we should believe in him? So this verse answers, the perfect Lord is not responsible for the sinful or pious acts of the jiva. The suffering of the jiva is caused by his actions. And the actions are not because of the Supreme Lord. The actions of the jiva are the responsibility of the jiva, not the Lord. So the suffering that is in the material world is caused by the jiva, not the Supreme Lord. So we shouldn't blame him for the suffering that takes place in the material world. The jiva was pure. Pure jiva does not become an agent. Unfortunately, the jiva gets covered over, and he has hostility to the Lord. So the living entities with hostility to the Lord are bewildered by ignorance. They think they're the material bodies, and then they start doing acts in this material world, which may be sinful or pious or whatever, and then they get karma for that, and they have to suffer. So we cannot blame the Lord for the suffering, because the suffering is caused by karma, and the karma was caused because of the choice of the jiva. The jiva chooses in this way because he is ignorant. Why is he ignorant? Again, it's his choice. He can choose to cooperate with the Lord or not cooperate with the Lord. If he doesn't cooperate with the Lord, he falls into ignorance. Then this whole process starts. So the whole cause of the suffering of the jiva is ultimately the jiva. In the Nectar of Devotion, the very first characteristic of bhakti is klesha agni, destruction of klesha, or suffering. And then Rupa Goswami analyzes suffering. So this is the result of the ultimate suffering, where we get sickness, or we get accident, or animal attacks us, or whatever. That is caused by karma, an action, a sinful action in a previous life. What caused the sinful action? A jiva desires to do something for his enjoyment, therefore he commits a sinful act. So the jiva chooses. It's not that somebody makes the jiva do an action to get his enjoyment. The jiva chooses, I want to enjoy, therefore he does an action. Then he gets the karma for that. So we have the karma, and behind that we got the desire of the jiva, which is called the bija, or the seed. And what is the origin of the seed? Why the jiva desires to enjoy things, material objects? And then the answer is ignorance, avidya. What does ignorance mean? Hostility to the Lord. He doesn't recognize the Lord. I don't recognize the Lord. I'm independent of the Supreme Lord. So that avidya is the original cause. It turns into desire. Desire turns into action. Action leads to sin. Sin leads to suffering. So this is repeated in many places in the scriptures. So this is one place we see it's very nicely stated how the jiva is responsible for his suffering and nobody else. So Bharata Vidyabhushan here quotes from Vedanta Sutra to support that statement. Also Prabhupada quotes this also. The Lord has no partiality or cruelty, vaishamya, nargrinye, because the pleasure and pain suffered by the living entities is caused by their karma. So the scriptures declare. So it's all dependent on the karma of the jiva, and the karma of the jiva is because of the jiva. It's not because of the Supreme Lord. So therefore, we can't say the Lord is partial or cruel. A partial meaning he favors some to enjoy and others to suffer. Cruelty means he ignores the suffering jivas. So the Lord does none of that. The jivas create the situation for themselves, and they also help. They have to solve the problem. How? By changing their karma, stopping their avidya, etc. There are many ways in which you can stop the karma. One is pacification. For instance, if we get sick, we can take a little pill and we can lower the fever. Okay. That doesn't really cure the sickness, but at least it gets rid of some of the symptoms. So this is what karma yoga does. It gets rid of some of the symptoms. We lessen our sinful activity by countering it with punyas, good activities. And then we balance it out so that we do more punyas and less sin, and therefore we can live kind of tolerably nice in the material world. Okay? So that's one solution. This, of course, is condemned in the Bhagavatam by giving the example of the elephant who bathes in the river and then comes out, he's all clean, and then he sprinkles dust all over himself. Then he has to go back in the water to clean himself. So the jiva may get free from a karma which causes suffering by doing atonements or prayaschitas, pious activities, but then again he'll commit another sinful activity, then he'll have to do another atonement if he wants to get rid of the suffering. So why does he do that activity? Because desire. So therefore, in karma yoga, it's just by doing atonements, these prayaschitas and stuff, and punyas, it's not a real solution. Definitely we can raise up in the material world and go to Svargaloka, etc., but it doesn't solve the problem. And as Krishna says in Bhagavad-gita, then after your punya is exhausted, you fall back down to earth and you suffer again. So it's not a permanent solution, but definitely we can put the balance in favor of pleasure rather than pain in the material world. If we do jnana, yes, we can destroy all of the karmas. And jnana means knowledge, so knowledge destroys ignorance. So our ignorance for the jnani is, I think I'm a body. When I know I'm the Atma and get fixed in that, and I'm eternal, that is the knowledge which will destroy the ignorance and the karma. So that's the process of jnana. However, as the Gyanis say, we do not destroy the karmas of this lifetime. Whatever you have to suffer in this lifetime. And that cannot be reversed. After you die, if you've destroyed all your other karmas for the future, yeah, then you get liberation. But we do not destroy, the jnana does not destroy the karmas of this lifetime. So it is in one sense a solution, but not a final solution. So the other is to do bhakti. So in bhakti we reverse the ignorance by knowledge of the Lord. Not just I'm not the body, I'm the Atma, but by knowledge of the Lord. So higher than self-realization or Atma Gyan is knowledge of the Supreme Lord. So this becomes bhakti. We recognize our Lord Supreme, we recognize ourselves as the servant of the Lord. That removes the ignorance, the avidya. So when the root is destroyed, avidya, then the desires are destroyed and karmas get destroyed. And as Nectar Devotion states, even the karmas of this lifetime, called the prarabdha karmas, get destroyed by the process of bhakti. Not just the karmas for the future, but all the karmas of this lifetime also are dissolved by bhakti. So that creates a final solution to the problem, and not only we can get liberation, but we also go to the spiritual world. So that's the effective way of destroying the karma of the jiva. Also Vedanta Sutra says, someone may argue as follows: you cannot say the Lord is just, because he gives different karmas to each jiva at the beginning. But that's not so, because the karma is without beginning. So we can argue, well, I have bad karmas, you have good karmas, so if we trace it back, then ultimately we started at a certain point, and the Lord gave me the bad karmas and he gave you the good karmas, so therefore he's not just, he's favoring you and not me. I get all the bad karmas, and then I have to suffer more. So the answer is, there's no beginning to the karma. So you cannot say the Lord started the whole process by giving some good karmas and some bad karmas. The jiva has created his karmas, but we can't trace back who started the karmas in the beginning, other than the jiva. So the karmas that the jiva creates are created from previous lifetime, with no beginning. So that's the answer that the Vedanta Sutra gives. Anadatvat. Here the Lord does not create jivas with unequal karmas in the beginning because the karmas are unending, no beginning. Yeah. So, suffering is caused by karma, karma is caused by the jiva. This explanation will depend on the fact that the jiva is not the material body, and the jiva goes from body to body. If we don't accept that, then we can't accept this explanation. So that's why most religions don't accept that the jiva goes from body to body. Therefore, they can't use the law of karma to explain anything, and therefore they get stuck. They can't explain why the Lord is powerless to help the jiva in the material world and doesn't prevent his suffering. Those whose intellects are convinced of Paramatma's qualities, whose minds are absorbed in his qualities, who have made him their goal, who are surrendered to him, being washed of all ignorance by that knowledge of his qualities, attain liberation. So though we're talking about liberation and jnana here, we find that the person has to surrender to Paramatma in order to get liberation. So the jnani cannot independently get liberation without recognition of the Supreme Lord. The previous section here, talking about the Lord's not responsible. He's faultless. He's not responsible for the jiva's suffering. So if one understands that the Lord has good qualities, and he's not subject to prejudice and favoritism, etc., then he's in a good position to get liberation. He is not averse to the Lord. He understands the Lord's just nature, that he is full of wonderful qualities. They have been qualified for liberation. We know from the Bhagavatam, it is stated that the jnani, by his endeavors, rises to a position where he thinks he is liberated. But if he does not recognize the position of the Lord, he does not respect the lotus feet of the Lord, then he falls from his position. So the jnani who is averse to the Lord, he falls from his position. He won't get liberation. He may think he's liberated, but he won't. He falls from that position. So that's a confirmation of this statement here, that you attain liberation by acceptance of the Supreme Lord and his wonderful qualities. He is faultless. The wise man sees Paramatma as equal in his creation of the Brahmana endowed with knowledge and good conduct, the cow, the elephant, the dog, and the dog-eater. So the wise person sees the Paramatma not being prejudiced by being equal to all living entities and supporting all living entities. Those persons are truly wise who see Paramatma as being equal, even though he creates unequal bodies for the learned Brahmana, dog, eater, which differ in actions or duties. So the Brahmana gets his position, why? Because of some good karma. It's not because the Lord is favoring one jiva over the other. It's the jiva who's done activities that make him a Brahmana, high position. Dog eater mean low position. Yeah? So why he does that, it's because not him, it's the karma of the jiva. And for the cow, elephant, and dog, which differ in form because of being different species. So the cow is different from the human being, elephant is different from the human being, and the cow, dog is also different. So we get all different species. Why? Because originally there's some karma involved and they get different bodies. And the Lord is sama. He is equal to all, but jivas get in that position because of their activities. So the wise man appreciates that. He understands the equal nature of the Lord. He doesn't hate anybody. Paramatma is equal everywhere like rainfall, since the respective species receive their forms according to their respective karmas, not through the Lord's like or dislike, of certain jivas. So there was the verse from the Brahma Sutra, say the Lord is not prejudiced, he doesn't hate anybody. So because some jivas end up in lower bodies or miserable bodies, it's not because the Lord hates them. It's because of the karmas of the jivas. The jivas are responsible. So here the Lord is compared to rainfall. When the rain falls, it falls equally. And it'll fall on the plant, it'll fall on the ocean, it'll fall on the mountain, fall on the land, etc. So it falls everywhere. So the Lord is like that. He's equal to all jivas. Being unattached to the happiness arising from sense objects, he who attains the happiness of Atma becomes next fixed in realization of Paramatma and attains an experience of greatest bliss. So you can get fixed in Atma, then you have to become fixed in Paramatma. So you cannot separate Atma realization from Paramatma or Supreme Lord. So how do we realize Atma? First we do Nishkama Karma Yoga, that qualifies us for Jnana, and then we realize Atma, and then we realize Paramatma. So the Jnana here that produces knowledge of Atma is not separate from Bhakti. It's linked to Bhakti also. So, although we may think that chapter 5 is all impersonal, talking about Brahman and Atma, etc., no, there's a link here to the Supreme Lord also. That Muni, realizing me as the protector of sacrifice and austerities, the master of all controllers, and the protector of all living beings, then attains liberation. Here again, realize me, realize the Supreme Lord. So though it's all about Jnana, etc., ultimately it's a realization of the Supreme Lord as the protector of sacrifice and austerities, master of all controls, protector of all living beings. So he realizes Atma, his self, and then he realizes Supreme Lord and worships the Lord. So this is the gradual process of getting out of the material world. Let's say the Jnani can do this and end up in liberation, or even merging in Paramatma or Brahman, and the devotee can use this to realize Supreme Lord and go to the spiritual world. So that concludes chapter 5. Now chapter 6. This contains the same themes again about Nishkama Karma Yoga, but also it talks about Astanga Yoga here, which we could say is an extension of Nishkama Karma. He who performs his work out of duty without seeking results is a sannyasi and an Astanga yogi, not one who lights no fire and performs no action for maintenance of the body. So rather than renounce everything, one should do work, but without seeking results. Nishkama Karma Yoga. So he's the real sannyasi, he's the real yogi. So the method of Astanga Yoga, suitable for a person who has been purified through Nishkama Karma Yoga and achieved control of the mind, and the method of creating steadiness in the person of unsteady mind, are described. So here we see that Astanga Yoga needs qualification. You cannot do yoga unless you are qualified by purification through Nishkama Karma Yoga. So not everybody can do yoga, like not everyone can do jnana. Krishna discouraged Arjuna from renouncing and doing jnana. He says you have to do karma yoga for purification. So similarly, if you want to be a yogi who's also renounced, you have to do Nishkama Karma Yoga first. So, in this way, Astanga Yoga needs a qualification of Nishkama Karma Yoga. O son of Pandu, know that the meaning of sannyas is the same as the meaning of Astanga Yoga. One who has not given up desire in his actions is never a yogi. So Nishkama Karma Yoga is giving up desire with the actions. Then he becomes the yogi, and this means sannyas. So sannyas literally means giving up everything. Nyasa means to give everything up. So sannyas means give up everything. Yeah? So the karma yogi does not give up action, but he gives up action for himself. And therefore it's called Nishkama Karma Yoga. Action without desire. One who has not renounced the desires for the fruits of action cannot be either a Jnana yogi or an Astanga yogi. Only one who has given up those desires can be either type of yogi. So we have to give up the results of the action, not necessarily the action. For the sage wishing to attain yoga, action is said to be the cause of elevation. For the person who has already attained yoga, cessation of action is said to be the cause of maintaining that state. So this sounds a little bit of a strange sentence. What does it mean? For the practitioner of yoga who desires to attain steadiness in meditation, prescribed karmas are the cause of his elevation to that stage, since they purify the heart. So here again, you have to do Nishkama Karma Yoga to come to steadiness in yoga. We cannot separate the two processes. For one who has attained steadiness in the meditation, cessation of those prescribed karmas is the cause of maintaining steadiness, because they interrupt his meditation. So once you've got steadiness, then you give up the action, because it'll be a distraction for you. So once you've got steadiness, then you can give up that Nishkama Karma Yoga. But if you're haven't attained that steadiness, then you have to do the Nishkama Karma Yoga. The yogi with internal functions stopped, engaged in meditation on the self, is considered exactly similar to a flame situated in a windless place which does not move. So this describes the meditation process where the mind no longer thinks of external objects or any impressions at all. So the internal functions stop. In Patanjali's yoga system, I think the second sutra is yoga is described as chitta vritti nirodha, stopping mental functions. All mental functions, stop all thoughts. That's yoga. So that is what it's described here. Supreme bliss comes to that yogi who fixes his mind on the soul, whose desires are then destroyed, who becomes devoid of passion, who finally experiences Atma. So, as with Jnana yoga, Astanga yoga's goal is Atma. It is not attachment to the material body, doing asanas for whatever reason. It's actually to realize the Atma. That's the goal of Astanga yoga. Thus, constantly experiencing Atma, the yogi free of sin easily attains the unlimited bliss of experiencing Paramatma. So again, this yoga process that we're talking about, Atma, it leads to Paramatma realization also. So again, we cannot separate Astanga yoga from bhakti. The two things are also related. After directly realizing his own Atma, he then realizes the Paramatma. So if we try to separate Paramatma from the whole process of meditation, it will fail. And thus Patanjali also recommends that in doing Astanga yoga, you have to also cultivate realization of the Lord. Experience his own Atma by the yoga method described above, with all faults burned up by this method, the yogi easily attains unlimited happiness in the form of realization of Paramatma. The yogi in perfect samadhi realizes that Paramatma is the indweller of all living entities, the resting place of all living entities, equal to all. He sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, never loses sight of me, nor do I lose sight of him. So this is very clear. We're talking about the yogi, and he has a vision of Paramatma everywhere. So we cannot say it's all impersonal. O Arjuna, I consider him to be the topmost yogi who sees everywhere the happiness and distress of others as his own. The mind is fickle, agitating, strong, and firm. I think it is difficult. The mind is fickle, agitating, strong, and firm. I think it is more difficult to control than the wind. This is Arjuna speaking. You describe the yoga system, but it's very, very difficult for me to follow that system because I cannot control the mind. So what does Krishna answer? O mighty armed, certainly the mind is difficult to control and fickle, but it can be controlled by repeated practice and by detachment. So Krishna does not say, okay, because you cannot control the mind, fine, do something else. No, he says you have to control the mind. It's difficult, but you have to do it. How do you do it? Practice, repetition, and by detachment. The mind can be controlled by renunciation arising from seeing the fault in sense objects were different from Atma. In other words, if we look at the world and examine it, then we see everything is temporary and there's so much suffering, etc. So in this way, by some intelligence, we can become detached from things in this world. Of course, we also need some scriptural guidance for that. And by practice directed to the qualities of Atma, focusing solely on the self-manifesting happiness of the Atma. So one has to repeatedly do the practice of concentration on the Atma. This, of course, is referring to Astanga Yoga, where there's a concentration on realizing Atma. So we become detached, and we have to practice focusing the mind. In Bhakti Yoga, there's a little advantage because, of course, we follow the same process. Detachment. Bhagavatam says, to practice Bhakti Yoga, you cannot be too attached to the material world. So we have to practice some detachment also. And then what is the other thing? Then we focus on the Lord. So the principle behind all of the angas of bhakti is always remember the Lord, never forget Him. So we're always thinking of the Lord, focusing on the Lord. So this is our practice. So how do we do that? We have many practices. Looking at the deity. So that's a daily practice. We come in, we have darshan of the deity. What do? We chant the name of the Lord, and we do that regularly. So we chant japa every day. So this is remembrance of the Lord also. This is a practice to concentrate on Supreme Lord. So instead of concentrating on the Atma that the yogi does, the Lord practices concentrating on Supreme Lord. And the advantage is, Lord is very attractive. He has wonderful form, qualities, and activities, etc. So this makes the process of bhakti easier. The uncontrolled mind is brought under control by practice of constant meditation on the Supreme Lord under the directions of the authorized Guru and by avoiding association with sense objects. So this becomes the process of Bhakti Yoga when we do that. So worship of the Lord, knowledge of temporary nature of matter, that was the detachment process, and meditation on Atma is another factor, and worship of the Lord, then we control the mind. O son of Pritha, this person does not fail to attain material or spiritual goals. One who has done the auspicious work of yoga is not deprived of the benefits, O my son. He attains the state of his previous birth in a relation with Atma and Paramatma by using his intelligence. He then strives again for complete perfection, O son of the Kurus. This is an answer to the question, what happens to the yogi that fails? He doesn't complete the process in one lifetime. So Krishna answers, he continues the process of yoga. So like that, also we can say that bhakti is the same. We don't complete the process of bhakti, we don't get prema in this lifetime, we don't fail. Next lifetime, we continue. And we continue until we get to prema. So this is for the yogi also. That yogi, striving with more effort than in his previous life, becomes purified of his faults, and reaching full perfection after many births, finally attains liberation with a vision of Atma and Paramatma. So finally he succeeds and gets his liberation from the material world. According to me, the yogi is better than the tapasvi, better than the jnani, and better than the sakama karmi. Therefore, be a yogi, O Arjuna. So, in this verse, in this chapter, Krishna has explained all about Astanga Yoga and its relation to Nishkama Karma Yoga. And that Nishkama Karma Yoga has to be directed towards Atma or with Jnana. And then we do Astanga Yoga, but finally, we have to do Bhakti Yoga. So Bhakti Yoga is the best of all after this. So Yoga is better than the other processes, than Jnana or the other processes, but I consider he who worships me with faith, with mind attached to me, to be greater than all types of yogis. The devotee who is dedicated onto me is considered to be the most intimately connected to me. So of all of these different processes, Karma Yoga, Nishkama Karma Yoga, Jnana, and Astanga Yoga, Bhakti Yoga is the best. So that's actually the conclusion of things here. The tapasvis, people who do austerities, and others are connected to me. So there's some connection with the Lord because it's an authorized process. The Nishkama Karmi is more connected to me. The unalloyed devotee is most connected with me, the Lord of all beings, who can see all things at a glance. So this glorifies the process of bhakti. Of all the different processes. So, to summarize the first 6 chapters, the first yoga was a summary, putting the background of the Gita, etc., and explaining the confusion of Arjuna. And in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th chapters, Krishna spoke of Nishkama Karma Yoga, with no desire for results, and how that was aiming towards Jnana, and then finally Bhakti. And in the 5th chapter, he explains how Nishkama Karma Yoga contains within it Jnana, because it's aiming at Jnana. And in 6th chapter, Krishna speaks of Astanga Yoga and how that also leads to liberation through recognizing Supreme Lord. So therefore, everything is pointing ultimately to Bhakti Yoga. Then the next 6 chapters will discuss all about Bhakti Yoga. Okay. Question?
So in the 5th chapter, Vijnana Sampade, where humble sage sees with equal vision the dog eater, the elephant, and so we're talking about all those animals that once they become animals, human beings, some of them at least, the human beings, and sometimes they become animals.
Yeah.
So from that point in time, the animals sort of work their way back up until they get to the human species. That's called ascent. They ascend. Ascend from higher to higher, monkey, lion, cat. So also someone actually was talking about how there is a sort of retrogression. It's like I don't know, is there such a thing? It's like when a human being is cast into some species rather than become a hog-eating stool, he first retrogresses through some sort of species down till he becomes a hog. So there's ascension and retrogression.
You're saying, does he gradually descend to a hog, or he suddenly descends to a hog? Well, I don't think it's stated directly anywhere, but in the Bhagavad-gita, in a later chapter, it talks about how the very sinful people, gradually they sink lower and lower and lower. So that would indicate that they can just keep going lower and lower. They get one low species and eventually they end up as a plant maybe. So these are for the very demonic people. But that we could say is the law of karma. They'll get 5 lives as a donkey and 2 lives as a snake, and then finally they become a fish or something, and then they become a plant. That's their bad karma. So it can happen like that. They sink lower and lower.
What brought this up was Bhanu Swami, I think it's my place, and he saw a Siamese cat. He goes, oh, that particular species is a regression. He's in retrogression. It's not moving up. I don't know.
He went from higher to a lower species.
Yeah.
The cat was lower than what?
Yeah. Well,
the dog?
A human being maybe to a cat, and then he's going to go lower to a rodent or something.
Oh, he's on his way down, in other words. Well, they could be on their way up. We don't know. Yeah. So you could become, get down to the bottom as the grass, and then you have to work your way up again. Grass to a fish, to a turtle, to a pig, to a dog, to a horse, to a cow, or a cat or whatever, and then to a human being. So you can go upwards also in that way.
So for clarification, you just said that if someone gets that you're going to take, for your karma as a human being, you're going to get so many lives as a cow, so many lives as a tiger, so many lives as a bear, so many lives as a snake. So there's all these lives that are waiting for you, one from the other. So in that sense, you could sort of take a retrogress going up.
Yeah, it's all up to Yamaraj, I think. Yamaraj will decide which way you're going to go, how many lives down you're going to go, how far or how much you're going to go up before you become a human being.
Going up is natural, and this is one species, it's just a natural cycle.
Or of course then there's the choice also. Yamaraj said, what do you want to do first? Do you want your good karmas, your bad karmas? Maybe he gives you a choice sometimes also.
I have another question. Further down we'll talk about how the mind, now here the mind is agitated.
Yeah.
In the old Bhagavad-gita, is that a literal translation from the new version of the Bhagavad-gita?
Okay.
Which is just,
This is from Baladev's. I did this translation. I did this based on Baladev. I made a translation based on Baladev. A little different.
It's a different.
Yeah.
Because the word obstinate was used, I was just wondering if they left out obstinate in the new translation.
Oh, I see. Well, no. Another question? No. Okay, fine. Hare Krishna.